Hello, this is Robbie Mitchell here from Head in the Cloud Development. Today I'm going to walk you through a couple of examples of using NetSuite's caching module in the SuiteScript 2.1 API. For the record, this video is being recorded in January 2025 on NetSuite version 2024.2. Okay, so first, what exactly are we talking about when we say the cache? Let me show you from NetSuite help. If we go in the Help menu to the Suite Cloud Platform, SuiteScript 2.x API reference, modules, and we can click on n/cache. So we'll use the cache module to enable temporary short-term storage of data. The cache module is supported by all server-type scripts. Using a cache improves performance by eliminating the needs for scripts in your account to repeatedly retrieve the same piece of data. So today I'm going to walk you through two different user event script scenarios where caching data is useful. First, we're going to look at a scenario where we're saving customer records and accessing some seldom changing NetSuite record data via the cache to make their lookups super fast. Second, we're going to simulate sending fulfillment data to a 3PL to see that you can cache external API credentials, allowing you to appropriately reuse a token throughout its lifespan. So what do you need to know? This video is intended for NetSuite developers and administrators. You should have the administrator role in NetSuite to do everything I cover here. You should at least be familiar with JavaScript and basic web technologies here. We'll be coding in TypeScript using the SuiteScript 2.1 API. Specifically, we're going to be creating 3 user event scripts and using the SDF plugin to upload them to NetSuite. So a quick note on software requirements. If you want to follow along exactly, you'll want to have VS Code and Node.js installed. You can of course also do this in WebStorm, which is not free if you're familiar with using the SDF plugin there. I'm not going to walk through the details of downloading and installing these applications here because I do that in my other videos. But to give you a nice starting point, I have prepared an SDF account customization project here on GitHub. So let's download the code from GitHub and unzip it. I'll post this in a comment so you have it too. I'm going to click Code, Download Zip, and then open it in VS Code. And after you open it, the first thing you'll want to do is run npm install from the terminal. This just installs the required node modules. If you're not familiar with files like package.json and tsconfig.json, then I recommend you watch some of my other tutorials where we talk through setting these up in a bit more depth. In this video, we're going to jump right in. So let's get into NetSuite. Let's talk about my goal. Let's imagine that for our customers in NetSuite, we want to use a county-based sales territory system. So here on the customer, we have a county field, and it's just a text field, but we also have this very simple county sales rep mapping record that just lists who the sales reps are for various counties. Now first let me tell you, if you're wanting to set up a county-based sales territory system, don't use this model. There are probably much better ways of doing it. This model just demonstrates our goal of using the cache module. So again, my goal is very simple. When I save a customer record, I want the sales rep from this record to be set on the customer record. And of course, this would not be a difficult thing to script on its own, but the point is that these territories will very seldom be changed, so caching this data is a great opportunity to save users valuable processing time when saving customer records. So let's look at the blank starting point script we've given you. Now I always say the most important thing I can teach you about NetSuite development is to do it iteratively. Don't spend hours writing code hoping you're going to get it right. Instead, write a little bit of code and test it often. So first, let's implement the lookup without the caching module, just to get it working. And as usual, let's first restrict the context that this code will run in. For what we're doing, we want it to run in create and edit context, but not xedit or delete mode. We only want to do our lookup if there is a county on the customer. So let's add an if statement for that restriction. Okay, so now that we have our county, let's use SuiteQL to look up the sales rep for the county. And even though I've been using SuiteQL for a while now, I still find it helpful to use the wonderful free SuiteQL tool SuiteLit to test queries. So to look up the values for these records, let's go to the record definition. And I'm going to want to select the sales rep. So we're going to select that value from the record type ID. And we're going to do it where is inactive is false and the name of the record matches the county of our customer. And our customer had a county of Santa Clara. So let's just test that here. Okay, great. So the 1008 we got back is the internal ID of the sales rep that we want. So this works. So let's start with this. Let's break down the formatting a bit to make it more readable. And I find, especially if you're writing longer queries, it helps a lot if you break down the select and the from and the where clauses to different lines. This makes it very clear what we're asking for and what the criteria are. And we want to replace this Santa Clara with our county, so let's just do that using the query module. Lets us use a question mark, and then we can add a params list here. And this just replaces question marks with the sequential values in this array. And to tell TypeScript what it is we're getting, we can say that it's going to be an array of objects where this is a number, the internal ID of the sales rep. And it's always a good idea to log things after a lookup, so let's add a log for this. And now let's extract the sales rep from our results, being careful that if there is no result, we don't ask for an undefined value. We'll use the ternary operator to do this. So if there is a result, then we'll get that value. Otherwise, let's just say null. And let's again add a log, and this time we're going to log how many usage points are left. And this will be clear. It'll kind of show you the difference between using cached and non-cached lookups. And at the end, we can say if there is a sales rep, then set that on the customer. Okay, so now let's implement and test this to make sure that it's working so far. So the first thing we need to do is compile the code, just using the tsc command. And from there, if you've set up your account credentials, you can click on the file here and use the view command palette and use the SuiteCloud upload file command. And in my other screen, it's popping up and asking me for permission. I'm going to allow it. Here, I'll move that over so you can see. It's just kind of refreshing its OAuth 2.0 access here. Okay, so that's done. So now it's asking, oh, it's warning me that the file was going to be overwritten. That's fine. And now it says it's been done successfully. So now let's go ahead and implement our script. And we'll use this title. And it looks like it kicked me out, so I'll just have to sign back in. Okay, so I'm going to go to Scripting, Scripts, New. Select my script file, click Create Script. Just going to save it like that. And let's deploy it. And I'm just going to leave it in testing mode so it only runs for me. But I'm going to go ahead and select all audience. And it applies to the customer, of course. Okay, so now let's test it. So I'm just going to edit my customer. And I'm just going to clear the sales rep, and let's see if it gets reset. Okay, it did. It got set to Mary Redding, which is correct. And let's look at my execution logs. Okay, yep, it looked them up, and we can see it took 10 usage points to do that. So if you don't know, all NetSuite scripts are governed by API points, and in a user event script we get 1,000 points. So if you were doing a lot of lookups and record reads and writes, then you could quickly go through your points, but our one lookup only used 10 points. So that's not too bad, but you'll see how much better it is when we use caching. Okay, so now let's implement caching on this. So first we import the nCache module, of course. And to use the cache, the first thing we need to do is load our cache using the getCache method. So let's call it rep cache, cache.getCache. Name is, so the name of the cache, as you can see by the IntelliSense here, is just something that we make up as a name for this cache. So we can call it county sales rep mapping. Next, we need to ask to get the cached value for a particular key, which is what our county name represents here. And when we ask for a cached value, we have to give the cache a function that will load that value if there isn't already a cached value for it, like this. And since we've already figured out how to get the data we need, let's just move these lines of code into our loader function. And instead of storing it in a variable, the cache loader function always needs to return a string. So let's just return an empty string if there's no results. And actually, this is a number, so let's cast this to a string if there is a sales rep. That should make it happy. And I think that's it, actually. So let's upload this and try it. We'll run TSC and upload this file. Okay, so let's try it out. Again, just to make it clear, I'm going to unset the sales rep, save the record. Okay, so our logs show that it did the lookup because it was a non-cached value, and it stored it in the cache. But now let's try it again. Now that we have it cached, this is when you should see the better performance. So if I again clear this, save it again, should save a bit faster. And now look, we found the sales rep and it only took 1 point. So in other words, that's 10 times better server performance than using non-cached values. Okay, that works great. But there's one more piece we need to think about. These rep mappings don't change often, but maybe once or twice a year they do change, and we need to address that here. The way we can handle that is to deploy a user event script on the rep mapping records. That way we can update the cache accordingly when those records do change. And before we dive into the script, there's just one little adjustment we need to make here in our customer script first. In our get cache call, there's an optional scope parameter. The values are here. The default is private, which means it's only available to this script. But let's set it to protected, which means that we can access this cache in other scripts of this account. Here's the details on that. Okay, now let's dive into this sales rep county mapping user event script. And we'll keep this very simple. Let's first start with a scenario where someone edits one of these county sales rep mapping records. And let's read the county and the sales rep into variables. I'm going to copy this field ID from my other script. Now let's add our cache module and get our cache just like we did in the other script. I'm actually just going to copy that line of code here to make sure I get it right. And so what we're going to do is, if someone's editing this county sales rep mapping record, then we want to update the cache for this county with the new sales rep. So let's add a log saying what we're doing. Okay, now we'll use the cache.put method to update it. And just to mention, you could also do this on creation of one of these rep mapping records if you wanted to be more proactive about populating your cache. But let's go ahead and test this. And so I changed both of these files, so I'm going to upload both of them here. Create a new script for this. Again, I'll just leave it in testing mode for now. So now let's change the sales rep for Santa Clara County to Matt Nolan. And let's look at our script execution logs. And I've got a typo here, but yeah, we updated the cache value for Santa Clara County to this new sales rep. And if I edit the customer again and save them, we should see it switch. And again, now that we're putting that value directly into the cache, it doesn't have to do any lookup, but it gets the correct value. So that's great. Let's fix that typo first. Okay, next let's handle if the sales rep mapping record gets deleted. So again, we'll read the county and the cash into variables here. And now, since this time there's no new sales rep, we're just going to remove this county from the cache. And let's add a log to say what we did. And let's upload and test. So let's just delete this Santa Clara County record now. And yep, so it shows that this value is removed from the cache. So very good. So this ends the first scenario for this video. And by the way, I have included the record type in an optional objects folder in the SDF account customization project in case you want it. Next, we'll be looking at caching an authentication token for a third-party API. The example here involves an item fulfillment, so let me pull up one here. So I'll be testing just by saving this record. The scenario here is that maybe we use a 3PL, and whenever we save an item fulfillment in NetSuite, we want to send the data to them via an API. So here's our starting point. And if you do this sort of thing with APIs very often, you'll know that many APIs these days will send you a refresh token that's valid for some number of minutes or hours or even days. And you can use that refresh token to get a new short-term access token. So what we're going to do is cache the short-term access token along with the expiration date, so we can keep using the same token for as long as it's valid, and only ask the API for a new one when we truly need to because the old one has actually expired. So let's get to it. Let's start by restricting the context of our code here to run only when users are creating or editing a fulfillment. In real life, you might want to do this on the ship event as well. Let's add a comment saying what we're doing here. Now, like in the last example, we're going to start simple and do this without caching at first, just to make sure we're clear on what's happening. And we're going to kind of go bottom up here so it's clear why we're doing what we're doing as we code it. So again, our end goal here is to be able to send this fulfillment to a 3PL. So let's import the HTTPS module and see what that call would look like. So this is obviously not a real 3PL, but this shows that what we need here is the headers for this call. So what that might look like is so here we're assuming that the API call we need to make to send the fulfillment uses a bearer token, which we can get by sending a pre-authenticated refresh token to the API ahead of time. So while this is a totally made-up 3PL that we can't actually access, I have actually set up a dummy suitelet in another one of my test accounts that we can use to hit for a fake token. So let's write our function for getting our new bearer token. I'm going to copy and paste in my SuiteLit URL here. Let's just log the response. And we'll return that token response. And to make it clear how much the caching module helps again, let's add some performance logging details. So here I'm going to call my getNewBearerToken function. Then we can parse this, and once you test it, you can see that the response comes back just as an object with a token and an expiration number. So now that we have our bearer token, we can plug that into the headers. And let's add another log here to see the time and usage details. And for the usage details, I need to import the runtime module. We'll say get current script dot get remaining usage. And I'm going to comment out this final line since we're not actually going to send it. The exercise here is to get the token, not to actually use it. So let's deploy this and test it and see what we get so far. So we'll create the script record. Let's deploy it to item fulfillments. I'm going to leave it in testing mode for now so it only runs for me. I save the deployment, and now if I just save any item fulfillment, we should see some execution logs. Okay, yeah. So we can see that we got a token here, we got an expiration timestamp. We can see that it took 111 milliseconds, which is just over 1/10 of a second, and it cost us 10 usage points to do this. So now let's implement caching and see how much this improves. Because what this expiration timestamp means is that this token is good for some amount of time. I think it's a minute. And in real life, it would be valid for longer than that, so you'd get even more benefit from caching. I just made it short so we can kind of see the difference more easily. Let's get back to our code. Let's import the cache module. Let's get a cache, and we'll just call it We'll just call it 3PL token. This cache can be private because we're only using it in this script. And now the way this is going to work is our cache is going to use this getNewBearer token function as the loader. And then only if the cache token is expired are we going to recall that function for real. So that means we're going to need to change both of these to let, since we might have to reassign them if the token is expired. But before we call the function, we're going to check the cache and see if we have a valid token there. So we're going to ask for a token, and the loader function is just going to be this getNewBearer token function. So we're going to parse whatever response we got back. Now let's log the expiration date of our token. And now this is just a number, so let's go ahead and make a date from it to make it human readable. And then what we need to do is check that expiration date. So if the token is expired, then we'll need to get a new one. And we'll keep adding logging as we go here. So the way we store the new token in the cache is to first remove the old token from the cache. Then we basically call the same cache get function again, knowing that there's no value in it now. So now we know that this time it is definitely going to call this function. Then we're just going to parse that data again, and then we will have our token. So at this point we're guaranteed to have a valid token. So let's upload and test this. Upload the file. And then to test, I'm just going to edit and save my fulfillment again. So there's nothing cached yet, so it's still going to take just as long. Yeah, so look, it used 12 points that time to look it up and store it in the cache. But now if we do it again within a minute, we should get to see the cached version. Yeah, so look, we're using the token with the same expiration. So it expires 27 seconds past the 36th minute. And that time it took 5 milliseconds as opposed to 140 before. So that's less than a 20th of the amount of time. And it only took 1 point. So that's much better performance. So if this was a real server that actually took more time to process tokens, your savings would be huge. And now if I edit it again, my token should probably be expired by now. So let's just make sure that getting a new one does work as we want it to. Yeah, so here we see that the previous one is expired, so we had to get a new token. Cost us 14 points. And it took about 1/5 of a second. But if I do it again, just one last test, just to make sure that it's using the cached one again. There we go. It again took 5 milliseconds and 1 usage point. So that is great. And that concludes our SuiteScripting tutorial on caching for today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Feel free to get in touch if you have any questions. Thank you for watching. We'll see you at SuiteWorld.